welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Katerina with KM Sews, and today I will show you how to make the perfect box corner. Have you ever struggled with them or still struggling? Well, I did, and my box corner were just awful. They were either lopsided, I was never able to line up the corners, they were like curved, so it sure was not nice and pretty. So today I will show you two different kinds of methods how to make a great corner and how everything lines up perfectly, as well as I show you how to make adjustments to the depth of your bag without changing the size, the length, the width of the bag, but yet just changing the depth of your bag. For example, here we have one bag that I make in this tutorial, which is only 2-inch deep. So great for little things. But then I make the same size of bag, however, I make an adjustments to 4-inch. So if you like the tutorial and like my video, just give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to hit that little subscribe button down below, as well as click that little bell, and you'll be notified of any other videos tutorial that I may come up with. Also, please leave me a comment in the comment section if you want to see something specific. So let's start sewing. So for my example, I am trying to make a bag that is 8-inch in length, 7-inch in width, and 2-inch in depth. To make a bag that is 2-inch in depth, I need on both sides a corner that is 1 inch. So here too, I have already 2 pieces of fabric cut to size, and I will show you later how to actually calculate everything. Cut to size, and I laid both pieces of fabric right sides together. I'm using a 1/4-inch seam allowance, and I will draw my corner on either side at 1 inch. So here's the first corner. And on the other side, I will do the same. Already. And now we will be cutting out these two . Here we go. And on the other side as well. Great. Now what is most important is that we are keeping our seam allowance exactly in order for us to make a great corner, a box corner. So I will be sewing a 1/4 inch on either sides and a 1/4 inch on the bottom. I will do that offline. I will go to my sewing machine and I will do it offline, and I will see you in a bit. So now, since we have sewn everything together, on the either side at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and on the bottom a 1/4 inch seam allowance, again, the seam allowance has to be exact, otherwise it's not gonna turn out correct. We will be reaching in, and we're going to prepare our box corner. And you can do it 2 ways. You either open up the seam allowance and you are lining your seams exactly, or you can nest your seam allowance. That means you're pushing one seam allowance to the left or the right and the other to the opposite way. So basically you're nesting your seams. So let's do that. And then you just roll your fingers just to get the corners lined up and to get your seam nice and neat lined up. So once you have done that, you can now pin it in place. And you can do that on the other side as well. Just turn it around. The important is that if you, on the bottom, if you push your seam allowance to the left, you want to also, on the opposite side, you need to push it to the left so it doesn't get scrambled up here. So again, you're pushing that to the left, and the other seam you push to the right. And then you're just rolling it with your fingers, lining up the seams and your corner here, so you get a nice straight line. And then you use a pin and you pin it or you clip it in place. Now, because we used a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you also need to sew down on the bottom at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I will do that off camera, and I'll meet you right back. Okay, so here we are. We have sewn our corners exactly on 1/4 inch. The bottom seam allowance points into the same direction, so there's no twisting. So let's go and see how is everything lining up in the inside. Let's turn the back around. So as we can see, our seam allowance on the side lines up with the bottom. We have the same measurements on either side of that seam allowance, so there's nothing lopsided. And our box corner is exactly 2 inch. And we have the same on the other side. Again, our seam allowance on the side lines up with the bottom. Both measurements on either side of the seam allowance are exact the same, and it's 2 inch of a corner. So there's another method that I would like to share with you, and it's just a little bit different, and we get to that in a minute. Okay, again, I have the same size of fabric for a 8 by 7 inch bag. However, I will not cut a corner out. This time I will leave that uncut. But what I will be doing, again, I will be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And what I will be doing, I will be stitching around the back, starting on the top with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, down to the bottom a 1/4 inch, and go up a 1/4 inch. And I will do that again off camera, and I'll meet you right back. Okay, so now that we have sewn around our back, just the bottom and the sides at an exact 1/4 inch seam allowance, we reach into our back again and pushing out that corner here. And then we need to make sure that we're aligning the bottom seam with our side seam. So we're kind of pushing it off to the side. And here is the bottom seam and our side seam, and they need to be aligning correctly. And your best way to do that is if you push one seam allowance to the left and the other one to the right, so you can actually feel that your seam allowance is nesting. That ensures that your corner is going to be in the exact position. So here we are. I gotta push this a little. Okay, here we go. I mean, you can feel it. So now we're, I think, in the perfect position. Now on your cutting board, you usually have these diagonal lines. You have a 30, 45 degree and a 60 line. Sometimes you only have a 45. You wanna use the 45 degree line here for you to create that perfect corner. So you are going to line up one of the sides with this diagonal line and the seam with one of the straight line here. And obviously the corner needs to push exactly here on one of the straight lines that will be your starting point. So once you have that, you take your ruler and you're measuring 1 inch down. Here we are. And then you are just making a mark, just a line. This will become your stitching line. So this, on this line, you're going to stitch. And you will be doing that on either side. You can put some pins in there or some clips just so it doesn't move around. So this line here will become your stitching line. And I've done it already on the other side. So again, we have to move it to the right side. And it does not want to cooperate right now. What is going on? Here we are. And we're feeling that our seam is lining up correctly. perfect. And here we are. And we're marking just one more time here. And then again, we will be stitching on that stitch line. And I will be doing that off camera, so I'll be right back. Great. So again, now we stitched exact on the line that we drew. Again, the seam allowance points in the same direction on either side. And now we're just cutting off that corner, like to a 1/4 inch seam allowance on either side. Now let's go and look inside. And again, we created the perfect corner. Seam allowances are lining up, the side and the bottom. And both sides are exact the same width from that seam allowance. And our corner measures 2 inch on either side. Again, here it lines up. Okay, so now we have our bag done. We have a small little bag, which is 8 inch in length, 7 inch in width, and we have 2 inch in depth. Well, what if we want the bag to be deeper? What if we want a 4 inch depth? But we want to keep the same length, the same size of the bag. So what are we doing? How are we calculating that? Well, I have drawn a little sketch here. And for example, we say this is 7 inch and this is 8 inch long. And we would like to have a 4 inch deep bag. So this is going to be 4 inch in depth. Well, we know we need 2 pieces of fabric. So this is our center here, which we are sewing our 2 pieces together. So that means I have 2 inch on this side and 2 inch on the other side. And we, of course, we need to include our seam allowances. So in my example here, so I want a 7 inch bag. So this is 7 inch. And I have to add to it on either side 2 inch for my box corner, plus the seam allowance, which is in my case a 1/4 inch. So I'm adding on this side 2 1/4 inch because it's my seam allowance. I'm adding also on the other side 2 1/4 inch. So the total piece that I need in width, that I need to cut my fabric, is 11.5 inch. Okay, so we got that. Now, what is the length that I need to cut? Well, my bag, I like to have it at 8 inch. So we have 8 inch. In this case, I have to only add on the bottom the 2 inch for the corner, plus, of course, my seam allowance. So in this case, I'm adding the 2 1/4 inch for my bottom. So it's plus 2 1/4 inch, plus my 1/4 inch on the top for my seam allowance, because I have to make it nice on the top. So my cut would be, in this case, 10.5 inch. So in order for me to create a corner that is 4 inch in depth, I need to cut my fabric at 11.5 times 10.5 inch. So now I have done that already. So here is my fabric. I cut that already to size. And again, we're lining it up, right sides together. And we will be now measuring our corners. And this time we are measuring a 2 inch corner. So we get our ruler And it will be 2 inches on the bottom and 2 inches on here on the sides. So where's my little marker? Let's use this marker. And we do the same on the other side. So 2 inch by 2 inch. A nice square. So we'll be cutting that away. And I will be going to the sewing machine. And again, I'll be sewing on the sides as well as on the bottom at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I will meet you right back. Okay, perfect. So now we have again sewn on either side at a 1/4 inch seam allowance as well as on the bottom. As you see, our corner is substantially bigger now. And we will be doing the same as we did before. We're just reaching in, grabbing our corners. In this case, it's easier to actually open up the seam allowances. But either way, you can either open them up or you can push them to the sides. So once you line your seam allowance, the seams together here, your corners should line up just perfectly. So let's go and clip that in place. And clip this in place. And of course, if we roll the fingers a little bit, here we have that perfectly lining up. Doing the same on the other side, just reaching in. Open up those seam allowances. Just like that. So my dog is sleeping here off to the side and snoring. Have you ever heard a snoring dog? It's quite funny. Alrighty, here we are. Let's clip that in place. And this lines up as well as this side here. And again, I will be sewing it off camera using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let me do that. Perfect. So we have now sewn both corners at a 1/4 inch seam allowance on either side. We opened our seam allowance this time, and let's go and look inside. And here we are. Our side seam aligns up with the bottom seam. Again, we have the same measurements on either side of the seams. Same on the other side. And our corner should be 4 inch, which is exactly 4 inch. And the size of the bag is the same size as all the other bags that I just did. It's just that we have just a deeper bag now. But other than that, it's still 8 inch by 7 inch. Just like the other bags that we made. Well, thank you for joining me in today's tutorial. I hope I was able to show you how to make the perfect box corners, as well as providing you with 2 different kinds of methods. I always struggled, but it got better. And also how to make adjustment to your pattern pieces to adjust the depth of your bag, but yet keep the same size of your bag overall. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were able to take away some information that you maybe didn't know. If you like it, please again subscribe down below, hit that little bell, and you will be notified of any additional other tutorials, sew alongs or whatnot. And I wish you happy sewing. Bye.